going to take a car and drive it on a track. The car and the track I made in Blender. I start with a brand new Unity project. Let me drag and drop these 3 assets into the game. There's the palette, there's the track, and then there's the car. I'm going to select all 3 and drag and drop them in the assets window in Unity. Now I'll take the track and I'll put it in the scene. Let me reset its position. The track consists of 2 objects that I care about, the barrier, and then there's the road. The Bezier curve is not necessary, but in order for me to get rid of it, I'll have to first unpack the prefab. I must have accidentally exported the Bezier curve with everything else. Let's pick the road and let's add a collider, physics, mesh collider, and then to the barrier, let's add a collider, physics, mesh collider. The other object I have here is the car, so I'll drag and drop the car. Now, since I put the collider on the track, when I drag the car out, it pops down to the track area. Let me just point it to face forward and make sure that the car is with the same forward axis. I could scale down the car till it's a more suitable size. In the car, I'll add a collider too. Physics mesh collider. Except to the car, I'll use a convex mesh collider. And the car, I'll also add a rigid body. And this is because I'm going to use physics to move the car. I'll set interpolate to extrapolate. Let me just set the camera to look right there. Bam. Now let's write a script to control the car. So I will say create a C# script, and I'll just call this car A. Then I'll open up the script by double clicking on it, which will cause Visual Studio to start up. All right. Let me gut these things out that I want to write my own. When it's grayed out like this, it's not being used yet, so I'll take these using statements out. Now let's see. I'm going to have 2 public variables, public float move speed, and I'll set the move speed to 30. Then public float turn speed, I'll set it to 100. Private rigid body RB equals null. In the start function, private void start, I will set the rigid body. This dot get component rigid body. Okay. Private void fixed update to read the input from the user. Float, it's going to be input from the axis that is the vertical. Then for the turning, it's going to be the input from the axis that is the horizontal. Now the values from these guys, they go from the range of -1, all the values in between the 0, all the values in between to 1. They're continuous values. All right, so to execute the movement, I'm going to apply a force. Rigid body.add relative force instead of just force. Like whichever way the car is pointing, that's the way that the car is going to move. Vector 3.forward times whatever the move value from the user was times move speed times time dot delta time. Okay, which the velocity change, it doesn't care about the mass, and it's an instant change. Now for the turning, we'll say this dot transform dot rotate vector 3 dot up, and we'll use the turn value from the user input times turn speed times time dot delta time, and that'll take care of the turning. Let's go back to Unity and put the script on the car and see if we could move the car. So here's a script. I'm going to drag and drop it onto the car. Then here in the properties, we can see the script was added. Now let's set up the camera. So I'll pick the camera, Control Shift F, and let's see if we can move the car. I go forward, I go backward, I can turn left, and I can turn right. On the car, there's drag and angular drag. I'm going to increase the drag to 1 and angular drag to 1, but let's see how it works now. Okay, now that there's some friction, it does hold the car. I maybe want to constrain rotation on the X and the Z. Now let's see if that keeps the car from popping up so much. As the car goes around the track, I'd like to follow the car. So let's make another script that will tell the camera to follow the car. And I'll open that up for edit. Same thing, let me just gut it a little bit here from the unnecessary stuff. I need a transform of what my camera is going to look at. I need a transform of where my camera is going to move to. Then I need a speed that it's going to move. Look speed and public float move speed. All right, so anything about the camera movement, I want it to happen all after everything else in the scene is updated. Private void late update if the look at is not equal to null. Quaternion target will equal quaternion dot look rotation, look at dot position minus this dot transform dot position. I'm going to get the angle to look at the car, but I'm not just going to lock onto that angle. I'm going to move there slowly. So I'll say transform dot rotation will equal a quaternion dot rotate towards this dot transform dot rotation from wherever I currently am rotated to the target rotation, and I have to say how fast. It will be look speed times time dot delta time. I keep multiplying by time delta time. That keeps things the same speed no matter how fast your computer is. If move to is not equal to null, then I'll also move the camera. This dot transform dot position equals vector 3 dot lerp. Lerp is a way to do the movement slow over time. So it's going to move from this dot transform position from wherever it is, and it's going to be trying to get to the move to. And how fast will it do that? Move speed times time dot delta time. that code I should be able to put on the camera, and then the camera will follow the car. Go back into Unity. I will create 2 empty game objects on the car, create an empty, and let me give it a shape to visualize it, a red dot. Let me call this the move to. So this red dot will be where the camera is going to try to move to. Okay, then I'm going to make another empty object, and this is going to be where the camera is going to look at. It's a yellow dot, so I could see it in the scene window. And this will be my look at. So now with the move to and the look at, I select the camera. Let me put the cam follow script on the camera, and now it wants these 2 positions, so I'll give it the move to position and the look at transform. Let's see what happens now. So first thing I'm expecting to happen is when I press run, the camera is going to go from wherever it is, and it's going to move slowly into position behind the car. And then as I drive the car around, I expect the camera to follow the red dot and keep pointing toward the yellow dot. So let's press play and see if I'm correct with that. There, and now if I drive, the camera is following behind my car. And let's come around this turn. This is a hard turn as I slow. There you go. I have a car driving around track. I could constrain the rigid body's position on the Y so it doesn't pop up. Let's play. Yeah, it's holding it down on the road better. So there you go. We just did it. A car driving around a racetrack.